Welcome, everybody. My name is David Sutphen, and I'm the Chief Strategy and Engagement Officer at 2U, and couldn't be more thrilled to be here today with two friends and two of the leading academics and presidents in higher education. President David Thomas, who's sitting right to my left, and Lynn Wooten, who's the president of Simmons. I think these next 40 minutes should be a pretty interesting conversation about what's happening in higher ed, some of the trends, issues of equity and access, and what digital transformation looks like. So I guess I'd like to start. I could spend probably the whole 40 minutes talking about their respective academic careers because they both have PhDs, they both taught for many years, they were both deans, and obviously are now presidents. So there's a joke in the Black community that everybody with a college degree knows each other. Well, everybody with a PhD really knows each other because these two have actually known each other for like 20 years. So I thought I'd actually start there because for those of you who know President Thomas, he has a reputation as being someone who spends his time and is committed to like mentoring talent. So I guess President Thomas, I'd love to hear just how you and Lynn met years ago.
Okay, well, there's always two versions to how two people met, so I'm giving you my version.
Then I can give mine.
I've known Lynn more than 2 decades by my count. The way I met Lynn is one of Lynn's very, very best friends is another outstanding African-American woman, Erica James, who some of you may know of is now the dean of the Wooten School. The two of them were very tight, and I knew Erica and knew that Erica was outstanding. And then she introduced me to Lynn, and it was very clear to me that Lynn was outstanding. And I've always thought of myself as a venture capitalist, but only I venture in human capital, people who I think are going to be outstanding. And believe it or not, I'm about a decade and a half older than Lynn, so I was further ahead in my career than her. And we just sort of connected, and at various points in time, we've reached out as each other has moved through the maze of higher education. And then Lynn got on the leadership track when she became the dean of the undergraduate program at the University of Michigan. And the way networks work is everywhere I would go, somebody would ask me who's going to be a star that we should have on our screen, and I would tell them Lynn. So I take some credit for the fact that somehow her name got on the track where people were talking about who could be presidents. It's been great to watch her evolve. She really is the future.
How much of that is true?
It's pretty true. Okay. So it is. Yeah, this time David's telling the truth. So yeah. As he said, my best friend and colleague and co-author, we're about kind of a generation behind David in the academy, both having PhDs in organizational behavior and management. So when we were in the PhD program, we used to say, you know David Thomas, do you know David Thomas? And someone, Erica, connected with him. He was the senior statesperson, really just always there, as he said, not only as a venture capitalist, but to give good advice, to mentor, sage, and wit.
Great. So I guess both of you now lead, liberal arts institutions, obviously an all-women's college, Morehouse, which has the tradition of, educating Black men for over 150 years. And there's a lot of debate in higher ed now about both the value of a college degree, the value of a liberal arts education, and I guess I'm interested in just both of your perspectives at this moment in history. Why do you believe that the institutions that you lead are so important and necessary in society? And just interested in your response to those critiques about the value of both higher ed and the liberal arts.
Well, Simmons was almost founded 125 years ago, and John Simmons' mission was for women to get a liberal arts education and a professional education so they can make an independent livelihood. Fast forward 120 years, and people are still asking, what is the value of liberal arts? Well, I think liberal arts, one, it teaches you to be a critical thinker. It elevates your humanities. It serves as a bridge really between adolescence and adulthood for reflection, for exposure to people, the natural sciences. And when it's integrated with a professional education, it sets you on a life course to be a productive citizen.
David, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in terms of the value of liberal arts education, I would agree with what Lynn just said. I would also speak to, part of your question was why the institutions that we serve now are important. And I'll just put it in a kind of historical context, at least for me. Morehouse, from its inception, has been defying the racial gravity of our nation. 154 years ago, 2 years after the Civil War, our founder decided that we could do something that most people in this country thought was not possible, which was to educate formerly enslaved men at high levels to be leaders and to serve their community. Today, at Morehouse College, we continue to defy the racial gravity of this nation. What I say about Morehouse College is that we represent the ability to create black male excellence at scale. You can go to any institution of higher education and find a few black men who you might say represent black male excellence. You cannot go anywhere else on the planet and find 2,200 at one time who represent that excellence, and any other institution with a 154-year track record of producing that. And one way to think about it is that Morehouse is an idea. The idea of being able to produce black male excellence at scale, which in general our country has failed to do. And I often have the experience of people visiting Morehouse who've never been there, and they have a wow. And I think the wow is deeply connected to, I never thought you could produce black male excellence at scale. And I think the world still needs Morehouse so that the world can have that imagination. And it really is about creating an environment with the assumption of excellence for black men. I went to what some people would consider one of the best liberal arts institutions in this country. And I can tell you that when I was there as an undergrad, my faculty did not think that I was that guy in their class who would someday be a chair professor at Harvard, dean of a school at Georgetown, and president of a college. Those weren't the signals I got. And I think that's what's needed in higher education. It is possible beyond the walls of Morehouse, but I think we represent that and the possibility for it, and the nation still needs it.
Undoubtedly, in terms of the need, there was actually an article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago about, the challenges that the black community in particular face when it comes to wealth creation, and even those who have college degrees and debt and the like. And I guess, I'm interested in both of your reflections, but I think it's not, the fact that you both have very similar backgrounds professionally, you both have lived and taught in the business world, and you're now running these institutions. I guess talk a little bit about what you see, Lynn. I mean, one of the things you and I have talked about is just the kinds of students that Simmons serves in terms of first generation, 50% of the incoming class being, women of color. So talk a little bit about the role that you feel both of those institutions can play in setting up a generation of young people to actually be able to live the American dream.
Yeah, similar to what David Thomas said, Simmons is in the business of pursuing excellence for women who really want to do something in their careers. And so Morehouse and scaling black excellence. And as you said, our class right now, half is 50% first gen, half is 50% women of color. And people come to Simmons because they want to do something with the world. They want to make it a better place. They want to move up in the income strata. And so first off, it's access. What we know we need from the article in the Wall Street Journal is we need access to education. We need cost-efficient education. But then, as David said, when we get there, we need faculty and staff and a village that believes in the students, that believes they can achieve, that's going to give them a high-quality education, and that's going to create these transformational learning experiences. Everything from honors colleges that David and I were just talking about, to leadership development, to integrating the liberal arts and professional education. And then students need a return on their investment. College is a big investment for most families, and so asking what the ROI is and making sure that you're monitoring and that you're committed to when people leave your institutions, it's important that they're going to go to grad school or they're going to get a career that's returning their investment. So it's believing in our students, it's giving them access, it's making them feel they belong, and the ROI is really important. And that's what Simmons has done throughout its history. When you look at alums such as Gwen Ifill and Ann Fudge and Rahima Ellis, it's really this culture of lifting as we climb.
And David, thoughts about how Morehouse and maybe the HBCUs as a whole have dealt with the challenges of both affordability, the ability to ensure that once students graduate, they're set onto a career path. I just had the pleasure of meeting one of your recent grads who's getting, I guess, his PhD in physics at Michigan, so I think he'll probably be in a good spot, but love to hear just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so there was a lot in your wind-up. Give me the short questions.
Yeah, I guess.
Go off course.
No. I guess I'm interested in when you think about the role of Morehouse ensuring that you're setting the men up who are graduating for success from a career perspective, so they don't end up being the person that's profiled in the article in the Wall Street Journal who did not get the ROI on their education.
Yeah. So I think at Morehouse, our students are advantaged by a few things in that regard. One is the success of our alumni. So our students get a significant amount of exposure to our alumni who've gone on to do things that, if you will, again, defy that racial gravity of our country. And I'll give you an example. I don't know if he's in the audience. I don't see him on the front row, but we have a student, an alum that you were just mentioning who's here, graduated from Morehouse in physics, now doing his PhD in physics at Michigan. Well, a 1954 graduate of Morehouse in physics who ultimately became head of the National Science Foundation, head of one of the national labs, provost at Brown, and ultimately president of Morehouse, Walter Massey, was a PhD in physics in the 1950s. And so our students see that path for themselves. One, it's modeled. The other is we've become increasingly focused on having our students connect to opportunities that didn't exist 20 years ago, like in the areas of technology. We've just put into our strategic plan a requirement that every student will now have at least one, which usually leads to multiple internships before they leave. So we're trying to connect in a much more explicit way the paths to careers to, quite frankly, make sure that all of our students find their way into good paths and not by happenstance. Because some of them want to go places where we don't have alumni in those places yet. And so we become very intentional about that. The last thing I'll say about one of the things people don't know about HBCUs is that a number of recent studies have shown that HBCUs, students who go to HBCUs from lower socioeconomic categories have a greater chance of moving into sustainable middle class and upper middle class jobs than students, at least black students, who go to predominantly white institutions. So,
Yeah.
so that's ingrained into what we do.
That's great. So let's shift the conversation a bit. Obviously, you both presidents of an institutions last year in the middle of the need to pivot overnight to online. And Lynn, I guess interested in your perspective in particular. I mean, you had the challenge of becoming a president during the middle of COVID, but you also had the circumstance of becoming president of an institution that had actually been in the online space since 2013. So talk a little bit about what that transition was like for you and some of the lessons and the benefits maybe that Simmons had by kind of already having experience in the online space, granted at that point only in the master's degree area.
Yeah. So as David Thomas said, he's this venture capitalist and convinced me to sign up to be president, but I didn't know I was signing up to be a president 6 weeks before a pandemic. So 6 weeks later, there's a pandemic. I signed on February 6th, which is my husband's birthday. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking about, do you open a university in the middle of the pandemic? And as you said, David, Simmons had a competitive advantage that we had been doing online graduate education since 2013, and in particular in fields such as nursing and library science, social work, other health professions, public health, really serving mostly women, but co-ed things, and food deserts, and these college deserts where there was not education and making access there. And so we had this learning agility, we had this know-how. And we were able to partner with 2U to think about, if we imagine our undergraduate program going online for the last academic year in the middle of the pandemic, what would it look like? And so we spent the spring semester and the summer semester really transforming our courses to make this virtual campus. But as I said earlier, it was very important that it had to be these transformational experiences. We just didn't want people signing into a Zoom room. And so taking all of those things and investing in high-impact learning practices, everything from making sure we had the co-curriculars to project-based learning. One of our signature program is called PLAN, and all freshmen take a Boston Leadership Development course. And so, for example, in our Boston Women in Politics course, using technology platform to bring women politicians in. And really what we did is technology became an enabler for us to really thrive during the crisis situation of the last academic year. It gave us a resource to emphasize and really feature a high quality Simmons education, to create a community, and to be prepared for the future. Both David and I can tell you, I never thought I would see the industry being disruptive the way it is now. I mean, before faculty used to say, I can never teach my class online. I want to be the sage on stage. When a pandemic comes, they learned a new skill set, and I believe higher education would be better because of the flexibility and accessibility now.
Yeah, and maybe talk a little bit more before I turn to David about how you were able to bring some of what makes Simmons special online, because that's the other thing that people I think often wonder is that you're going to lose that, and in some respects, I think oftentimes you can make it.
We did everything, and that was my one mandate to the faculty and staff, that I wanted it to be special, and I wanted it to be a year that people would remember. And so one, we spent time looking at every course syllabus to redesign it so that the courses were flexible, that they were engaging. We spent time making actually classes for freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors there were learning experiences inside and out. We had guest speakers in. So for example, we had a community where we used technology. We brought Kendi in to talk about anti-racism. On the fun side, we did things such as yoga classes. So it was this notion of making this virtual community where we engage. I hosted dinners and meetings with students virtually. And so it was so important that, especially for these students, I had a daughter who was a freshman last year too. I wanted it to be a year that they could remember in a pandemic. And so the learning was important, the classroom experience, and the community building, and being committed to our career services and our development of leaders.
And I guess, David, talk a little bit about your vision, your Morehouse Beyond Borders vision, because you talked about Black male excellence at scale, and I remember one of the things that you said to me as we started talking is the world needs more of Morehouse at this moment, and so maybe talk a little bit about just the broader Morehouse Beyond Borders vision and how that shaped your decision to move online.
Yeah, so, what I realized when I got to Morehouse was that for 154 years, we had essentially done or delivered education in one modality, which was or is young men come to a 66-acre campus. They stay for 4 years. Some stay a little longer because they love it so much. They miss a few credits so they can stay, a semester or two longer. And then they leave and they go out and they have an amazing and disproportionate, I think, impact on the world, positive impact on the world. And what we started to think about as we were thinking about where Morehouse is today and how we have a greater impact was this idea of we have an obligation to take Morehouse to the world, not just have the world come to Morehouse. We also began to think about what are our assets. One of our assets is brand, and part of that brand is the brand of Black male excellence being produced. We then began to think about, on a host of dimensions, but one of them was our educational enterprise, how can we impact the world? And that just naturally led me to begin to think about how do we leverage online and for what group? And so we are starting our first online degree programs this fall. We're targeting non-traditional learners, not non-traditional students, which to us means students who are beyond the age range of 17 to 25, which is kind of the traditional group that you find on our campus, who have some college credit but have never finished. Turns out there are over 3 million such Black men. We will maintain our identity as a male college and remain deeply committed to our fundamental mission, which is to develop men with disciplined minds who will lead lives of leadership and service, regardless of their chosen professions and career paths. And to Lynn's point, the team that's been designing that with our technology partner, your organization, David, 2U, has had front and center in the conversation about how we design each course. How do we bring what is the essence and soul and distinguishing aspect of Morehouse to this enterprise? How do we build community online among these online learners? Because we think the Morehouse community is an important part of what our young men experience that influences their sense of themselves, their role in the world. And the last thing I'll say about it is, as we thought about Morehouse's impact on people who, for a variety of reasons, can't spend 4 years on our campus, their lives have started, they have families, we started to look at some of the ways in which this can make a difference, us doing this can make a difference in individual lives. So it turns out today, there's something on the order of 80% of the jobs that are advertised that would be coded as creating sustainable middle class and upper middle class career paths require a 4-year degree. We also know some things sociologically, one of which is when it comes to the evaluation of your human capital, Black people do not get a break. What do I mean by that? Somebody who's been out there doing a job, but the next level job says you need a college degree. If you're Black and you don't have one, that will block you, even if everything else says you can do the work. So, I know there's an anti-credentialing movement going on out there in the world, but if we confront today's reality, because the world's not going to change overnight, and so I'm not knocking these efforts to move toward getting away from that requirement, but that is a reality, and we know that Black men of color who don't meet that, and for that matter, people of color in general, men and women, or not going to get that break. The last thing that it's also connected to is on the human development side. One of the things we found fascinating as we have gone into this online environment is the number of people applying who are over the age of 50, don't want a degree just for the next job, but they want it to complete themselves. They want it to complete themselves. And in that sense, right, Morehouse also matters in terms of people's sense of what it would say to have the Morehouse imprimatur put on me about how I've lived my life. And I think that's another important thing for us
Really
to think
powerful,
about.
really powerful. Lynn, maybe talk a little bit about, David's obviously at the first phase and you're in the early phases of undergrad, but as you said, you've had graduate programs for a while, and just the ability to expand and extend the mission and the impact that women and other male students who've graduated from your master's degree programs are having all around the country and the world in their chosen profession.
Yeah, that's a good question. And in particular, some ways amazingly similar to Morehouse. At Simmons, we've been addressing two things recently. One is what we call the she session. And we know that in this particular recession and pandemic era, when we look at jobs, career placement, paying, economic impact, women have been negatively impacted more, staying home with children, being responsible for care, and so lagging in their career. The second big thing we know from research is, David talked about the tax, in particular the African American and other people of color pay, is that women have this confidence code, and the women in the audience can laugh, is that if a man applies for a job, he might say, I can only do 50% of the job, but I'm gonna go ahead and apply for it. But the woman's like, I need to do 90% of the job before I can even apply to it. So to address your question about our graduate program online, in particular, one of the things we've seen is we've seen a lot of women come back to school in nursing and social work and library science and other public health because they want that degree, they want that credential, they want the confidence that they can move up to the next level, to start to break that glass ceiling. And in particular at Simmons, we like to think of ourselves similar to Morehouse, is that we have programs designed for women who really want to transform the world, but want to be leaders as they transform the world. And what our partnership with 2U has done is it's allowed us to take the Simmons brand all over the world. I was at graduation in May, and I met a woman who just completed her master's in nursing, and her husband was a military officer. She said, I always had dreams of going to Simmons. I knew I couldn't go to campus because I was stationed out here in San Diego, interestingly, and Simmons gave me that opportunity to complete my master's in nursing. And so it's bringing education in particular to women, but our graduate programs are co-ed, that develop them, that help them to be leaders in their career, that give them the flexibility to work and to lead an integrated life with their family or their caring responsibilities. So we're very intentional about that. We're intentional about you come to Simmons because you're already a leader, but we are going to really, in your graduate education, amplify your voice and give you that confidence to go after that next job through the curriculum, our clinical placements, our experience, our focus on scaling excellence, in particular for certain professions.
I guess we've only got a few more minutes. I want to pivot a little bit to, part of this conference is about digital transformation. If anybody went to Michael Moe's session, what the trends are for the future, how you think about it. And so I guess, David, you and I have known each other for, 10 plus years. And I was struck, one of the things you also said is, I want us to find partners who can share our values and our mission and help us enable us to do what we do, because there are certain things we're great at and there are certain things that we're not great at. And I guess I would be remiss sitting up on stage with someone who taught at Harvard Business School for 20 years and was the dean of a business school, and Lynn, who also has a PhD in corporate strategy. Why not just do it yourself? There's plenty of people who are like, you guys are partnering with a company like 2U, why would you want to do that? You got to share your tuition. Why not do it yourself? So you're both business people. Maybe offer a perspective on that.
Can I go first?
Sure.
Okay. I'll go first because Lynn and her team, they've been at it since 2013. And when I first proposed that we would move into the online space, I got this question a lot, in particular from faculty who were resistant. And it's very clear to me a few things. If places like Morehouse want to have an impact in shaping the 21st century, we have to move at an accelerated pace. And it was clear to me that to develop the set of skills related to being in the online space with impact, and moving beyond our traditional population from which we recruited, we would need a set of skills and capabilities and perspectives that were not on our campus and that would take us somewhere between 5 and 10 years to build to the level that exists at 2U as a technology partner, right? And to me, for higher education, for colleges like Morehouse, if we want to be viable by 2050 in the 21st century, we have to change at an accelerated pace and begin to have impact on the world in a more powerful and accelerated way. So that was one. The difficulty, I think, in this space, and I say this because I also look around this room, and this is about access, equity, and opportunity. You have two presidents from colleges who represent, who distinctly serve populations that are often underserved. And I wonder how many people are here in this room who lead some of these technology companies that are in this space. Right? The CEOs. And I can't see out there, but I see the lights. But my guess is there aren't many. And that raises the hard part in making a choice for a college like Morehouse. You need a partner, but who are you going to partner with? And what I found at 2U is if you look at 2U's, the people in 2U's leadership, there are Black people who are in roles that are influencing strategy and product. That is not true in most of the technology companies that are represented here that would want to partner with a Morehouse or a Simmons. So the easy part is you need a partner if you want to accelerate change. The hard part is finding a partner that not only say they share your values, because everyone here says they're about equity and access, but who represent it in the way they operate, and it starts with their composition and the roles, the diversity in the roles that are actually influencing how that organization will work.
Appreciate that. Lynn?
Well said, David. We have a push on Simmons campus to diversify our vendors and our partners. And one of the things is 2U has exemplified not only walking the talk of advancing access and equity, but when you look at their workforce, when you look at their mission, when you look at the vision and what they're trying to do for higher education. Simmons has been a partner with 2U since 2013. And I believe it's the classic case that I would teach at corporate strategy when I was at Michigan or Cornell. You have to decide, do I make it in-house or do I partner with someone? And similar to Morehouse, we always get that question. And what 2U brought to the table is a level of excellence that we could get to the market quickly and that we could deliver a product that complemented and enhanced the Simmons mission of really creating transformational education experiences for lifelong work. The level of service, the level of technology, the level of getting who Simmons is in each of its universities and appreciating it so that we can pursue this excellence, I think is what really sold us.
So when you think about what the next 5 to 10 years looks like, you both have recently entered the undergraduate space, maybe talk a little bit about, because I do think, going back to the article about the Wall Street Journal and a lot of working adult degree completers or fully online undergraduate students are going to be working full time and going back to school. So, part of this, how do you create a mechanism for folks to get a degree from great institutions like this while they're working? Talk a little bit about, when you think about who the Morehouse online student degree completer is, when you think about the reach globally that you'd like to have, and then Lynn, maybe talk a little bit about that from a Simmons undergrad perspective as well.
So, similar to David quoted the number of black men who haven't completed degrees, there are a lot of women who have left higher education and didn't complete their degrees for many reasons. And so when we think about the persona for our complete degree, it's women who started college, they left for finances or caring responsibilities or work. And we want them to have the Simmons experience. We want them to complete their degrees in a cost-efficient manner. We want them to be on a launching pad for their career. We believe in offering a liberal arts education also and developing them to be the leaders. So we have, one woman who's coming from a Native American reservation who's using Simmons' online degree, and she wants to be a social worker to change the world. It's those people that it's so important because a degree in American society is a very good asset that we want to give it to, lifting these women up so they can be the leaders in their profession.
And before David responds, I just want to offer, and hopefully my leadership won't, I'm not going to get in trouble for saying this number, but to your point about the power of the Morehouse brand, I think, when we announced that we were partnering with Morehouse to offer the degree completion program, the thousands of black men in a 3 to 5 day period who signed up and said, I want more information about that, was really just kind of unbelievable to us. I think the Morehouse team probably knew that that kind of demand existed out there the moment someone, and I remember seeing one of the emails from, to your point, of an older gentleman whose kind of son and grandson had gone to Morehouse, but he had never been able to complete college and was like, this is going to give me the opportunity to, join my family as a Morehouse man. And, as a black man to read that, I mean, it's what it's all about. So I'll let you take us. We got 2 minutes left. So since you're the dean of this panel, why don't you close us out with the final thoughts?
I thought
you said you were older than us, so I'm just being deferential.
Senior statesperson.
Yeah, senior emeritus.
Senior statesperson, emeritus. Yeah, soon to be history. To your question about what the future looks like, the future student for Morehouse, I think, one, we will continue to have a flagship on-ground program. What education for that group will look like is that it will be enhanced by the abilities we're learning about how to use technology in every aspect of what we do. We will also now be serving adult learners. And the other places that I see Morehouse going is, we have not been in the business of lifelong learning. What we know is that those individuals who will graduate from our campus this year will likely change jobs 3 times over the course of their career or more in the future, or become entrepreneurs. So we're already thinking about how we move into lifelong learning. And an example of that is with Spelman, our sister college, we're creating something called the Center for Black Entrepreneurship. We've already raised close to $20 million toward that effort. And part of what we're doing there is creating, all of the courses will be created so that they can be available online to other HBCUs in particular, and also for lifelong learning. Because most people become entrepreneurs don't leave college as entrepreneurs. They become entrepreneurs later. And we believe that there's some distinctive as well as generic knowledge about entrepreneurship that is relevant to the unique position that blacks trying to go into the entrepreneurial space find themselves. We know that race impacts your likelihood of success, that there's some dynamics around that we'll be focused on.
Great.
So that's what I would say.
Appreciate that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And I hope you understand why Simmons and Morehouse are in such good hands with Lynn and David as their presidents. So thank you.